couple of good news pieces that we found out in the research. One of the pieces of good news is that you can literally influence, you can think your way into happiness by what you consider to be worthwhile, worthy of joy. If it's looking at your child's artwork, you might know at a critical level it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but you can elicit joy because it was done by your child. Many examples where your own attitude towards something can express happiness. The second thing is that the nucleus accumbens, that part that generates dopamine, it lights up when you expect good things to happen. Anybody ever drag their spouse to the opera? I love to take my husband, and he loves the event. But what I do is I try to have him anticipate what that would be like, what the story is going to be like, how cool it is, or what was happening, because he's a history buff, and say, this would be worthwhile. His anticipation of what would be good about that event literally lights up that nucleus accumbens, which releases dopamine and increases the odds that he will really enjoy it. So you have to prepare for happiness, and you can by lighting up that nucleus accumbens through your own anticipation. This one was tough for me. Avoid comparisons with others. When you are around people who have larger homes and nicer clothes and bigger cars, you will have a lower happiness set point. When you live in a trailer park, but your trailer is the best trailer there with beautiful shrubbery, you are going to be happier than your neighbors. Comparisons is one of those human nature things which we can't change. So when you compare yourself to others, you're literally setting your set point for happiness, higher or lower, depending on who you compare yourself to. So if you avoid comparisons altogether, you'll be better off. And this one was difficult for me as I'm raising children, decreasing the linkages between the goals that you have and the happiness. Hey, come on, this is America. We have goals, and when you achieve your goals, you achieve happiness. The truth is that those who link very much when I get that promotion, when I get the new car, when I graduate from wherever, I will be happy, they are less happy than those of us who enjoy the journey. So being able to be in the present moment and enjoying the pursuit of the goal, the pursuit of happiness, is the joy, not the actual achievement of the goal. And to the degree you de-link the actual achievement, you will achieve greater happiness and perhaps motivation to achieve it. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy. So let's go to dopamine, the pleasure drug, all right? This is the natural pleasure drug, not cocaine or alcohol. But there are certain things about dopamine that decrease your ability to either perceive it or have a lot of it. You might know the natural culprits here are things like lack of exercise. When you don't exercise enough, you produce less dopamine. Insufficient sleep, you produce less dopamine. It's one of those things you do when you're sleeping. High chronic stress, high levels of cortisol, you reduce dopamine. They can measure it, and they can see that in these conditions you will have less, which will mean you're less happy. Increased dopamine, though, good news side, we've got a few things. One is strenuous exercise. Kind of walking the dog isn't strenuous exercise. You got to actually break a sweat, all right? If you can break a sweat, then you will increase your amount of dopamine. If you eat brain foods. Many foods are required as precursors to create dopamine. One of my favorite is bananas, almonds. They are both very rich sources of the precursor for producing dopamine. So sometimes there are nutritional issues. Social time with friends, just being with people, is tremendous boost for your dopamine levels. They measure it, and literally it goes up and stays up for a long period after you've had time with people, hopefully like tonight. And last but not least, laughter. If you can laugh, watch a comedy instead of a drama that's going to bring you down, you will produce more dopamine. It really works. You probably already knew that, but dopamine is the reason that you get such pleasure from those kinds of activities. So laughter is a big boost for dopamine. One of the things that's interesting from a leadership standpoint about dopamine is that if you have decreased levels of dopamine, you will respond better to threats, fear, intimidation. So organizations that run in a fearful mode, the leadership tends to be one that leads from fear and intimidation because they literally are trying to optimize this dopamine effect. That's where your greatest sensitivity is. If you have higher levels of dopamine, you learn better from positive incentives and envisioning the future and being positive. And so cultures tend to support one or the other because they literally change employee behaviors, whether they're a dopamine kind of culture or a dopamine deficient. So interesting takeaway with some